What's going on, guys, and welcome back to another episode of the German Bear Podcast. And today I want to talk about the 2023 Chicago Bears schedule release and want to talk about if the Chicago Bears can be dark horse contenders in 2023 for the playoffs or not. And as I said, today will be all about the Chicago Bears schedule release of the 2023 season. Overall, the NFL released all the schedules last night. And overall, I'm really excited for this upcoming Chicago Bears season because it could definitely be a franchise-changing season as well. Now, for the schedule, I think it stacks up pretty well. And first of all, I also have to give props to the Bears media team that did a phenomenal job with this year's schedule release with that Chef's edition, whatever it was, with Peanut Tillman. Spice was there, lots of Bears players, some Chicago well-known people as well, but Justin Fields, obviously, Tremaine Edmonds, love that some current players and newly acquired players were involved as well, so that was pretty cool. So definitely one of the best schedule releases this year for sure as well. But for the schedule for the Chicago Bears, I think it's a pretty cool one, and just to dive right into it right away, I think week one we played the Green Bay Packers at Soldier Field at home on Sunday, September 10th, which is, in my opinion, a great start to the season because the Bears can prove something right away. It's a new start of the rivalry with now Aaron Rodgers finally being gone, and I think it's a very interesting chance for the Chicago Bears, like I said, to prove themselves to the league, show what they got, and I think week one is always a surprise package. We saw it last year. The Bears beat the 49ers, very good team overall, still will be very good this year as well, and we beat them week one, right? It's just that surprise package that nobody knows what's coming week one, right? And everybody has to get into a groove. So it could be a trap game for the Bears as well, and they could lose big time because they don't know too much about Jordan Love, honestly, and nobody basically does, right? Besides maybe the Packers. So it will be a surprise package week one, but I love a big win against the Packers at Soldier Field to start off the season. Would definitely be a dream to start off 2023 like that. Then in week two, we'll face the Tampa Bay Buccaneers at Tampa. So away game, first away game of the season. And I think this is a pretty mixed bag. I think overall Tampa has a really good roster still. They got some really good players. But the most important position is lacking right now with the quarterback position and Tom Brady obviously retiring. So I think it will be probably Baker Mayfield to start off the season. And if Baker Mayfield is a starter, I think our secondary will have a field day. I think it will be a really good battle between those skill position groups, but this is definitely a winnable game. And I think it's overall two winnable games to start off the season, depending on how the Chicago Bears obviously start off the year. But I think week one and week two are definitely doable games. And with that, we want to move on to week three, which is definitely a different type of a breed in the Kansas City Chiefs at Arrowhead. First of all, very sad that the Bears won't come to Germany, obviously being a German, but I feel even more bad for my fellow German Bears fans out there because I wouldn't have been in Germany anyways during that time, so I would have missed it nonetheless. But for my other fellow Bears fans, I obviously feel bad about it, but we got the chance to prove something against the Super Bowl champs at their home stadium, which will be a pretty big game as well. Justin Fields against Patrick Mahomes. Can't wait for that game, honestly. I mean, it could be a big blowout, if I'm being honest, but I mean, if the Bears sell themselves right in that game, that would be a big win for the organization, win or not in that situation. But I think that would be a great opportunity to prove something and will be a big game. Can't wait for week three. Definitely excited for that one already. Then in week four, we will face the Denver Broncos, which is also mixed bag with Sean Payton. I think it's a very good roster overall, just depending on how they can stack it together. I think it's a winnable game overall for the Bears. I think the roster is at a point now that they could win some of those games where they lost last year, those one possession games, So I think that's definitely a winnable game here against the Broncos, but will be a pretty interesting game at home, second home game of the season. So I think that definitely is an advantage for the Bears as well. Then in week five, Thursday night football against the Washington Commanders. Man, I don't know why the league did it, but I mean, I can't imagine that they said, oh man, last year's game was so amazing, we got to do it again. Maybe some other reason, but I think Washington is definitely a beatable game. I love my man, Ron Rivera. Obviously former Bear as well, but he's a great coach. But I think definitely a game that the Bears should win against Washington because they also have some quarterback struggles. I don't think Sam Howell will be, especially early in the season, that good for them. He could develop later on, but who knows? But I think right there, that's a big game. Thursday night football. Bears can prove something on national television, which is a great opportunity as well. I think that should definitely be a win against the Commanders. Then week 6, we'll face the Minnesota Vikings, which is a pretty interesting team as well. Obviously, lots of ups and downs and mostly not great performances in the playoffs, but they are a really good regular season team, and they did not get a lot worse this offseason, to be honest. So they will be in the race for the NFC North championship title, or for the NFC North title overall. And it will be an interesting game. It could be a battle just like last year, where the Bears came back and almost won that game with that fumble by Amir Smith-Marset. Sorry to bring that up again, but that was definitely an interesting game as well. So I think the Bears can stick with them, just depending on how good the Vikings start off with the season. Then week 7, at home again, Vikings at home too, against the Las Vegas Raiders, which will be very interesting too, with now Jimmy Garoppolo being under center. This will be also a noon game, so very interesting game, but overall I think once again is a winnable one. Then week 8, one of my favorite matchups of the entire season, to be honest, against the LA Chargers. The Justin against Justin Bolt, the quarterbacks Justin Fields against Justin Herbert, two of the most talented quarterbacks in the entire league. I think the Chargers got a phenomenal roster. And if Khalil Mack is still on the Chargers roster, will be also the first game, I think, from him against the Chicago Bears, his former team. So that will be a really cool game as well. I still love Khalil Mack. And I mean, overall, that will be just a battle, I think, honestly. I mean, it's at LA, so they got the home team advantage, but I mean, maybe because they don't have the biggest fan base, some of the Bears fans can get there and take over and make sure that Justin Fields and the fellow Bears will be supported there too. Then week 9, we got New Orleans at New Orleans, which is a really tough game in my opinion too. They play some really good defense. Got now Derek Carr, who is definitely better than what they had last year with Andy Dalton in my opinion. So they could be a dangerous team too, depending on if Michael Thomas gets healthy again. But I think those are really underrated teams right there, Chargers and New Orleans especially. So 2 tough games in a row, 2 tough away games in a row, but the Bears could definitely get out of there with a win in my opinion, at least in one of those 2 games. Then week 10, also one of my favorite matchups of the whole season, at Soldier Field against the Carolina Panthers. Obviously the battle of that first round trade that happened this year. DJ Moore gets to play his former team. PJ Walker, by the way, as well. Deontay Foreman too. So tons of players that switch teams right there. And obviously the Panthers got that big trade for Bryce Young. So Bryce Young, probably he will start against Justin Fields right there at Soldier Field. Should be a really great game. Can't wait to see that. And it's also prime time Thursday night football again. So second Thursday night football appearance by the Bears in 2023. Can't wait to see this game as well. Week 11 against Detroit. First one against Detroit. I think this should be a win in my opinion, because I don't know. I don't trust the Detroit Lions yet. I just have to see it right now. So right now, I expect the Bears to at least be competitive in this game now. But the Lions definitely showed last year that they are not a team to mess with, and we should definitely be aware of their strengths. But I think for me personally, I just want the Bears to win this game. It's at Detroit, so you want to prove something in the Motor City. Will be a very competitive game in my opinion as well. And you got Noah Sewell against Penei Sewell, as well as my man EQ St. Brown against Amon-Ra St. Brown. So a bit of a battle of brothers right there too. And then week 12, you got the second Minnesota game at Minnesota now. I think this will be a very tough game. US Bank Stadium, very tough place to play at. But I mean, it's later in the season, and who knows how much injuries, first of all, the Minnesota Vikings and the Bears obviously suffered, but also it, I think, just matches up with where it depends on how much chemistry the Chicago Bears can develop until that point. I think if DJ Moore comes along, same with Chase Claypool, and already existing just connection with Darnell Mooney, and then the run game, Roshan, is he getting into it by week 12 too, I think, then we have really good chances, but it will be a tough game to be honest. Then week 13, we got the bye week, which is great if the Bears are really in a playoff contending spot. Then it's really good because you got 1 week just before the final, is it 5 weeks? Yeah, before the final 5 weeks where you just can reload and just charge up again and get ready for the last couple of games then. So I think it's a great spot for the Bears if they're in a contending spot. If not, I mean, it doesn't really matter. But I think overall, like I said, for a playoff spot, it's a really good bye week. Then week 14, playing the Detroit Lions the second time now at home in Chicago, which is beautiful too. I think this one should be a win. I don't want to lose to Detroit twice this year, especially because everybody thinks they're going to be so good. So I hope the Bears get at least one statement win against them this year. Then week 15 will be at Cleveland against the Browns, which is a big surprise package as well. Just like with the Broncos, they traded for Deshaun Watson for a big-time quarterback. He didn't play well last year, but who knows? He got now a true offseason that he can work with all his players. The roster, aside from quarterback, is really, really good. So I think the Browns are a really underrated team at the moment. They got probably the best defensive player, maybe besides Nick Bosa / TJ Watt, or definitely one of the best defensive edge rushers, at least, in Myles Garrett. So it will be a really interesting matchup. Can't wait to see that too. But I think it will be a close one, but it's not a unwinnable game for the Bears here in Week 15. Then Week 16 for me, a clear-cut win scenario against the Arizona Cardinals at home in Chicago at Soldier Field. So for me, that's a must-win game. I don't think the Cardinals have a really strong roster, especially the depth is not really good. They have some really good bright spots on the team, but I expect us to win that game. Then Week 17 at Chicago against the Atlanta Falcons. Tons of old Bears faces will be back at the stadium, especially one guy that I will mention is Cordero Patterson. Can't wait to see him. Maybe Ryan Pace travels here too, or travels to Chicago as well. So this will be a really good matchup between two young, talented teams. I mean, Atlanta did some really phenomenal stuff this offseason with the draft, with free agency, and overall over the last 2 years did really good jobs of adding on to this roster. So I think Falcons, really underrated team, could be a dark horse contender for the NFC South title, honestly, because it's not a really good division, and they could very well, if it's played right with Desmond Ridder, be a really good team in that division. So can't underestimate those players as well. So this will be a really fun matchup in my opinion. And then the Bears season ends, as you may can guess, because we only faced them in Week 1, with Week 18 at Lambeau Field against the Green Bay Packers. It's not set yet at which time this game will be played, and not the date. So if it's a playoff scenario or maybe a playoff clinching scenario, it would be obviously a bad situation because the Bears got to travel to Lambeau. Of course, they got to do it. But I mean, if that's the case, we just can hope and pray that times will change now. Justin Fields will take the hands and the lead of the NFC North and just dethrone the Green Bay Packers, hopefully with Aaron Rodgers now being gone, and just get a huge statement win in Week 18 against the Green Bay Packers. I mean, nonetheless, I just want to beat them in Week 18. I don't care about if it's a playoff scenario or not, and if we're already out of playoff contention. I don't care. I just want the Bears to beat them badly in Week 18, and I think it's a really cool opportunity once again to start off the season strong and finish strong against the Green Bay Packers. So overall, for the 2023 schedule for the Chicago Bears, I think it's a really fair schedule overall. I think it's not the toughest schedule in the league as well. I think it's ranked the 5th easiest schedule in the league by now, obviously depending on how teams develop during the season as well and during training camp too. But I think, like I said, it's a really good schedule for the Bears to show what they can do, showcase their skills, and really develop in 2023, which is, in my opinion, the most important part, because the roster still has some holes. Just look at edge position, right? That's the most obvious one. We still lack some players that we can probably only add in next year's draft or next year's free agency. I know we have assets, but you got to play it smart. You can't fix everything in one off season. So I'm definitely fine with 2023 still being somewhat of a rebuild or build up year to 2024, and then we can finally attack fully then in 2024 for the playoffs or even a deeper playoff run. Who knows? But I would be definitely happy with the Bears being playoff contenders at least for 2023, and it can definitely be that. Like I said, dark horse, not that possible, but it's not impossible. And I think, like I said, how the schedule is overall built up, I think there's a good chance that the Bears could sneak in at the back end of the playoffs, and that would be a massive win for Justin Fields' development and overall for the 2023 Bears as well. So with that being said, that's the end of the episode, guys. I hope you've enjoyed it. Definitely let me know in the comments down below what you think of the Bears 2023 schedule. Do you like it or not? Like and subscribe if you liked the video. Check out Instagram and Twitter if you want to as well. And as always, guys, bear down.